Hello, Canada Files viewers. This is Aidan Jonah, editor-in-chief of Canada Files. This is episode 24 of Canada and Palestine, the War on Zionism, co-hosted with Laith Marouf of Free Palestine TV. Laith, thanks for joining as always.
Good to be with you, Aidan.
As always to you as well. So I think the must-start event is a certain series of events in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands. If you listen to the National Post, Kristallnacht happened all over again. If you listen to people with eyes, such as the mayor, the police chief, and many other observers, it was far, far from that. So, Laith, can you talk about the sheer degree of mainstream media manipulation of this incident? And for context, I'll bring in some context before that. This was at a football match. These Israeli fascist hooligans had come to Netherlands and they were at the stadium. They also refused to observe a moment of silence for the Valencia flood victims. Then were making anti-Palestinian chants. I can't remember if it was after the game or during, but then they targeted people with Palestine insignia on the streets, and they also were starting to target and I believe even attack Palestine flags that were held up in the air. That's what I observed. But Laith, take us through the story.
Yes. First off, I want to say it's funny that the Zionists would say that this is the first Kristallnacht since the original Kristallnacht, because I remember what's his name, the son of Barbara Emil, uh, the journalist, the Canadian journalist
Oh,
there
you mean
from
dog shampoo guy?
yes, what's his name?
John Kay.
John Kay. I mean, he published in 2002 and 2003 even a documentary about Concordia, and he called what happened at Concordia University when we shut down Netanyahu as Kristallnacht. So, I mean, come on, you gotta keep your story together. It's either like there's every day is a Kristallnacht or there isn't any. The other thing is that we can talk about this story is that the supporters of Maccabi Tel Aviv are known inside the Zionist colony as crazy hooligans that are have been fined multiple times. The team inside Israel for chanting genocidal chants against their opponents that are not even Arab or Muslim. So the Israeli media said that the Mossad was sending a team of agents with the supporters of Maccabi Tel Aviv to protect them in Amsterdam. And the story starts 2 days before the game. The hooligans arrived in Amsterdam 2 days before, and they started their rampage and their actual Kristallnacht against the Arab and Muslim communities in Amsterdam. They were attacking Arab and Muslim businesses, besieging homes, starting fires at their doors of homes that have Palestine flags flying over them, and lynched a Moroccan Dutch taxi driver. And so the next day, taxi drivers across Amsterdam drove to downtown Amsterdam and started facing off with the hooligans and gave them a whooping, a literal whooping, because these all of these hooligans are Israeli soldiers and Mossad agents that are only used to killing children and women and unarmed civilians. When they are heavily armed and when they have air cover by F-15s and F-16s. So what happened is when they faced an opponent on the same level with no armaments in their hands or no air cover, these fascists got a whooping from taxi drivers. You know, all that propaganda we heard for years about karma ga, karma crap, shows you how much of a lie it is that, oh, Israeli soldiers are so great in martial arts and so on. That's all propaganda. They got beaten up by regular taxi drivers in the streets of Amsterdam. So the third day, that's when the day of the match happened of Ajax Amsterdam against Maccabi Tel Aviv, and you correctly pointed out their disrespect of the moment of silence for the Valencia floods victims. And this is because they hate the Spanish people because Spain is pushing for an embargo, a military embargo against the Zionist colony. So you could see how vicious it is. And when they came out, when they were on the field, they got a whipping also there. Ajax Amsterdam beat them 5-0. And then they went out of the stadium under the protection of the police force of Amsterdam, given that they were beaten up the second night. The police actually gave them protection while they were rampaging again in downtown Amsterdam and hunting for Arabs and Muslims to lynch. And there's that 13-year-old blogger from he's a very famous blogger in Holland. He's a fan of Ajax Amsterdam that does live broadcasting every game. He followed the hooligans and showed how the police were protecting them. In fact, he got death threats right there on the street from the hooligans, this 13-year-old kid. And we saw even how the municipal transportation company was ordered to have these trams follow the hooligans to block the vision of anybody from the other side of the street while they are rampaging. Imagine that, so they got full cover to protect them from the eyes of the mass media while they are, rampaging through the city, and none of them were arrested. So to see how the Zionists in the end,
Wait, I want to jump in there. Do you think there's a chance
yeah,
there's collusion between some level of the Amsterdam police or some higher level of government in Netherlands? Because that just doesn't seem like that something that could happen unless there's that kind of collusion.
there's definitely collusion because right now, Geert Wilder, the ultra-fascist, is in control of the parliament, and the prime minister of the Netherlands right now is just a sock puppet for him. So and we know Geert Wilder is like one of the most vile anti-Arab, anti-Muslim politicians in all of Europe. And so we could see that Geert Wilder and his government, his cabinet, wanted to, pit the Muslim and Arab communities of the Netherlands against the rest of society. And they planned this to look, the way that all of the Western elite, from the King of the Netherlands to the sock puppet Prime Minister of Canada, all of them had that copy paste boilerplate, statement, repeating the same words so fast. Uh, that shows you that there was clearly coordination and planning for this event. And I think they failed miserably. I mean, yes, this was all manufactured propaganda and manufactured event to create a manufactured consent from the public in the Netherlands and the West, and it backfired miserably in their face, the Zionists. I think, it was kind of a suicidal mission on the Zionist side. It was a suicidal mission for all of these politicians and the media in the West to run this propaganda campaign because it got exposed so fast. Because we all watched for 2 days the hooligans running wild in the streets of Amsterdam before we saw the reprisal against them. And so it was too late to try to create this, consent within the public in the West. And the other thing is that it was suicidal because it destroyed one of the last few key words that the Western audience has been programmed to respond to in a Pavlovian way. The Zionists blew up the word Holocaust and anti-Semitism last year by overusing it while we're watching a true Holocaust being conducted in Gaza. And now, because we all watched these Zionist conduct a pogrom against the Arab and Muslim communities in Amsterdam and anyone that supports Palestinian resistance or liberation. And then they used the defense against that. They called it a pogrom. So now the word pogrom has no meaning anymore. The word Kristallnacht has no meaning anymore. These were some of the few last words that the Western public has been trained to respond to in the way that the Zionists want them to, and now it's gone. So they're just
I
killing
mean,
their
Laith,
own.
it's an inevitable pattern or result of Zionist ideas. I mean, Ben-Gurion, as I think we talked about previously, simply just did not really care about the European Jews being murdered by Nazi Germany. If it could lead to the creation of a Zionist state, you and I know full well what money Israel stole from Holocaust survivors after the Zionist entity was created, and how many Holocaust survivors left Israel in disgust, and also how even how Holocaust survivors are spoken about by Zionists as being weak, right? There is the Zionists taking the legacy and the horrors that were faced in the Holocaust around the time of World War II is a total insult to the victims of the Holocaust.
Oh yes, oh yes, and I think Zionists, their best friend is hate towards Jewish people anywhere. And we saw how very fast the Zionist elite in the West, they're like, oh, no Israelis should go to the Netherlands, and Dutch Jews should leave very as soon as possible before they are. So on the one hand, they need the either the illusion or true anti-Jewish actions to happen in anywhere there is a Jewish community that hasn't yet, colonized in Palestine, moved to colonize there. So they need these European Jews, Canadian Jews, American Jews to feel unsafe where they are, so they can go colonize in Palestine and be cannon fodder. And so it is in their interest to either create the illusion and or create the events that are anti-Jewish
So,
anywhere.
like, enough with the Zionist whining and the justified whoopings. Can you take us through the important and recent military operations by Palestinian resistance factions?
Yes, yes. I mean, yesterday, Hezbollah announced the use of new missiles, ballistic missile Fadi 5, and this is part of the new weapons that they have been using over the last week. There's been multiple new weapons that have been kind of told to the media through these videos that Hezbollah is releasing that have now entered the battle. And so this is significant. It's also significant to point out that yesterday there, was the largest waves of missiles fired by Hezbollah since the beginning of the war. And the concentration was on the military industrial zones south of Tel Aviv and north of Haifa. And the images coming out from the colonists on the ground show that there was mass destruction in those industrial zones. And this is where the munitions for the anti-air defense systems that the Zionists have are being manufactured and much more. So clearly it was a very painful hit, and the Zionists responded immediately by targeting civilian buildings in the Dahieh, southern suburb of Beirut, and in the south, and as well as the Baalbek area. There was almost 200 martyrs yesterday, civilians that were targeted in those Israeli attacks. So in terms of the resistance inside Gaza, yesterday the Israelis announced the death of one of the sergeants, officers. I don't know. I don't remember their rank. uh, a major, basically, officer that was in the Jabalia region. So this is Jabalia that has been now under besiegement for more than 2 months. No food, no water, no nothing, and constant bombardment, and has been ethnically cleansed, the civilians inside it. And still the Israelis are unable to hold the ground. Palestinian resistance is fighting them. One last thing I forgot about the front in Lebanon is we also saw videos filmed by Israeli soldiers that of uh, salvos of missiles being fired from frontline villages in South Lebanon onto Israeli targets. So 46 days of bombarding those frontline villages in South Lebanon, and we are still seeing mass salvos of missiles coming out from that area. So that means the Israelis have failed completely. They bombarded, indiscriminately these villages, leveled practically all of them. They tried entering multiple times and they got fought off for 45 days, 46 days. And at least what they were claiming as Israelis, yeah, is that, okay, we couldn't hold the territory, but you know what? We destroyed all the missiles, launchers, and stocks in these frontline villages. Well, that's not true. So that's very significant. It means that all of Hezbollah's major stocks of missiles and their launching bases and so on are safe. And we're already seeing clearly that with the launches that Hezbollah conducted against the targets that I mentioned earlier. Yemen fired a hypersonic missile that hit a major air base just outside Tel Aviv. The Iraqi resistance still is targeting the Golan Heights mainly, with at least 12 attacks a day. And at the same time, we saw the Israelis attack outside Aleppo, south of Damascus, and ISIS attempting to attack from the American base around the Tenef. And yes, this morning, the Syrian government and Syrian military have issued a statement because the Israelis had sent an official letter to the Russians demanding that the Russians stop the transfer of weapons from Syria to Lebanon, to Hezbollah. And so the Syrian military and Syrian government issued a statement saying that Russia has nothing to do with this, and Syria will continue to supply the resistance in Lebanon with munitions and weapons. So, and the Russian ambassador in Syria also issued a statement saying that this is not their business, and that they're there to actually defend the Syrian state and government. So we're seeing slowly Russia being directly dragged into this confrontation, and I think the next few weeks will define the next stage of this war, and the Syrian territory, specifically the Golan Heights, will be the primary territory where this war is going to expand to.
All right, so let's talk about this expansion because I brought up the question last time about this transition period and how the resistance might take advantage of it. So you can talk about the Golan Heights, but of course we see the Israeli entity disintegrating from the inside with the cabinet firings, and also of course more reservists aren't showing up. So you can see this disintegration that's coming, but outside of the Golan Heights, what do you see as maybe like some of the short to mid-term steps for the Palestinian resistance to keep disintegrating the entity?
Yes, I mean, there's not much more than what they are doing right now, the Palestinian resistance in both Gaza and the West Bank, that they can do given their, uh, what is at their hands. So what the only thing that they can increase you know, in terms of attacks is those lone wolf, what they call lone wolf attacks inside the Zionist colony. So, that driver that plowed through Mossad agents a few weeks ago. So we may see more of those individual attacks inside Tel Aviv and others conducted, whether it's through machine guns, plowing through with a car, knives, whatever is that. And that is very stressing to the population there, the Zionist population, but also is very distracting for the security forces, the intelligence and so on of the Zionists. So we may see more of that. But the major escalation that we will and we'll see it that will bring us to a different stage in this war is number one, the response from Iran that we're all waiting for, truthful promise number three, and the increase in attacks by Hezbollah and the resistance inside Syria. Those three things are what's going to be the beginnings of the next stage. And given that we are looking at the new appointments that Trump is announcing, and they are all Armageddonists, okay, including the new Minister of Defense. He's an Armageddonist, Zionist Christian, and the UN ambassador of the US that's been announced. They're all like crazy like that. That means that this war is gonna involve the United States as soon as Trump is in power. So it is then imperative on the axis of resistance to raise the intensity of this war and enter this new stage of the war on their own terms before Trump comes into power. And so this is why it's inevitable that in the next few days, few weeks, we will enter this new phase of this war, and it will be the axis of resistance that triggers it.
All right, like so I also want to speak before we get to the Canada side of things. We know about the journalists killed by Israel, but how much do we know about journalists detained by Israel and its collaborator, Palestinian Authority? And I ask because I saw a recent Free Palestine TV video about the occupation forces arresting journalist Rola Hassanin. So can you talk about this issue?
Yeah, there is definitely tens of Palestinian soldiers Palestinian soldiers, yes, they're soldiers of truth. Palestinian journalists that have been abducted from inside the West Bank and inside Gaza and in Jerusalem, and some even Palestinian citizens of the colony that have been also rounded up and put in jail. So this is, this is the worst place on earth to be a journalist, not only at this moment, but in any recorded history since journalism became a thing. So we haven't seen this many journalists uh, martyred on any battlefield, not even World War One, World War Two, Vietnam, anything that's much longer as a war and much larger as in territory that's engulfed in it. And similarly, we haven't seen this many journalists abducted and or jailed in any other location on Earth and in history. So the situation, of course, for prisoners is very dire in the Israeli jails. The torture and the medical negligence and uh, the tests of chemical and biological warfare, all of those things are happening, and they're happening in a manner that again we haven't seen anywhere else before. So if there is any true journalists still left in the West, they would have been campaigning for the Palestinian journalists and Lebanese journalists, but they're not. Look at the Committee for the Protection of Journalists. They actually deleted any record of Palestinian journalists' abuse and killings from their database just a few weeks ago. This is unprecedented. Here's the, it's one thing to not talk about Palestinian journalists. If you're calling yourself a committee for the protection of journalists, let's say you have the database and you have all the information, and then you don't issue anything about it. Okay, I can. But to go all as far as deleting the record of these journalists even existing, it is unprecedented, and it's the Committee for the Protection of Journalists, the CPJ, wouldn't dare do it if there was even 10% of the journalists in the West that actually deserve that label of being called a journalist.
Right, Laith. So now we should switch to the Canadian front of things. Let's start with a farce. That is the former Prime Minister of Canada, Stephen Harper, got a Defender of Israel award from the Abraham Global Peace Initiative. Now, the Abraham Global Peace Initiative is led by a certain Avi Beniolo, and he is a Zionist freak. I mean, it's pretty common with these Zionists. The word Zionist and freak are almost entirely indistinguishable. But regardless, he and his organization are giving Harper this award. Well, he got this award, Harper did, on the 12th. I saw that Palestinian Youth Movement, the folks in Toronto, were going to protest that, so I hope their protest went well. How exactly it went is I'm not clear yet, but cheers to them for that. And look, Harper himself, now he's involved, I believe, with investments actually, facilitating the Israeli genocide as well on a more corporate level, which isn't surprising. Harper's a huge, visceral defender of Israel. Like you would know that even better than I.
Yes, and I think he's involved in the looting of Syrian gas and oil from the Golan Heights. Look, historically, you look at these fascists in Canada that, you know, and their history is very similar to the fascists in Israel. They have the same ideas that there's some manifest destiny, some chosenness, and that there's a civilizational war, and that they are the guardians of this civilization against the Muslim and Arab hordes. Okay, so to see Harper still being idealized by the Zionists, it's it fits the bill. I mean, when he was prime minister, he did support the Zionists in their wars in 2008 and 2009, and his government provided cover in the United Nations, and the targeting of students on campuses in Canada at his time. What can I say? The Conservative Party is now the Zionist Party in Canada. The Liberal Party is the Zionist Party. The NDP is the Zionist Party. I think that the Zionists should give awards to all of the politicians in the parliament in Canada, because they're all the same. They all prostrate to them and love their money and media
Okay,
coverage.
so let's talk about another story. This one's a little more funny. There are some very whiny Israelis because these surrogates are being discriminated against because they're Israelis. The poor Israelis can't, get surrogates as easily as they used to anymore because some people outright they oppose the genocide, which is good. Some of them I found it funny, a little comical, where they were saying, "Oh, I'm just concerned about the general safety of the area," and it's like it's such a delusional take because it's not. You don't need to worry about the safety of Israel. It's not going to exist in 1 to 2 years. So this perspective anyways. There's one perspective I respect. I respect one perspective that was coming from these surrogates. One perspective is kind of comical, and then you see in the story, the National Post is reporting on this, surprise, surprise. They have at least, one. They have one person who would actually still uh go and help a Zionist pair uh get their surrogate, get their child. If it's safe, if it's safe in Israel. But it's just like this is just the vile garbage that's being put out. These people, they even whined about social media comments that were critical when there's posts coming out online about it. These people, right? They're the supreme people. They're the chosen people. You can't hurt their feelings. You can't not make it super easy for them to have a kid. They're Israeli.
When you started the story, it's because I didn't read these headlines, I guess, and I was like, what does he mean by surrogates? And now I get it. So here is the Israelis killing Palestinian women and children, pregnant women, nonstop at a rate of something like 35, 36 children a day. So many pregnant women dead over the last 14 months, hundreds. And Of course, because they believe that Palestinians are less human than them, not only do they want to kill the Palestinian women and Palestinian children that they see as their mortal enemies, the Palestinian womb is the mortal enemy of the Zionists. They also don't want to hire Palestinian women to carry their babies. Okay. And they want to import wombs from outside historical Palestine to carry their babies. I say tough luck, tough luck. Actually, there shouldn't be any more Zionist babies on this planet. I hope they all get infertile with all the pollution that they're throwing with the weapons on all of our region here. I hope they will never carry babies again. And this, the Zionist womb should have the same uh, safety and future as a Palestinian womb.
All right, so let's talk about this is primarily a story on the Zionist lobby in Canada because there was a Nova Scotia New Democratic Party candidate. Their name's Tammy Jakeman. After CIJA, Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs, came out whining about some of their public posts, which I need to explain first of all. Even CIJA said that Jakeman accused Israel of genocide, which they're committing. The main Holocaust remembrance efforts, that's not clear how exactly they referenced that, so let's leave that to the side. And also described Israel as happiest when terrorizing Palestinians, which is outright true. And this NDP decision came very quickly after CIJA came out. No resistance, no pressure, no questions. Again, just demonstrating the absolute fundamental uselessness and, well, outright oppositional nature of the NDP towards Canadian people.
Yes, yes, and look, it is crazy that so much of us spend so much time to save Judaism and Jewish people. Honest to God, there's a Holocaust being committed openly in the name of the Jewish people. The vast majority of organizations that are Jewish, that are officially recognized as the representative of the Jewish community, are Zionist and are supporting the Holocaust in Gaza. They're supporting all these war crimes that are being committed here in Lebanon. And they're doing it all in the name of Jews. Now, me and you and anyone of decency have spent much of our life trying to differentiate between Judaism and Zionism and to teach people about that differentiation so they don't fall into hate against Jewish people. Well, you know what? After now 14 months of this genocide being committed, I believe it's not my job anymore to save Judaism or Jews from Zionism. If there isn't any Jews that love their religion enough to liberate it from Zionism, to the hell with Judaism. It's not my battle to fight. If CIJA wants to act this way, and there is no Jews in Canada that have the honor to actually take out CIJA from its seat of power, to challenge it directly and say, I want to save Judaism from CIJA and its ilk, then Judaism is not worth saving. It's not my religion. Okay. It's the same thing that here, when you look at these tweets that CIJA is complaining about, you know what? Maybe it's time to actually say the problem is those who are following this religion. If they are saying to you and to me every day that Judaism is Israel, the actions of the state of Israel are supported of by the Jews of Canada, and anyone that criticizes those is hateful of Jews. Maybe, maybe it's time to believe them. Maybe it's time to believe them that there is no difference between Judaism and Zionism. And under the Canadian Charter, me and you can criticize any religion, say any religion is fake. There is no God. And Judaism, Christianity, Islam, whatever we want to, we can say whatever we want to on them. Why are secular people going out of their way to defend Judaism? Okay? It's not my job and your job. Jews in Canada that claim to actually love Judaism have a duty to liberate it and save it. I don't anymore, clearly.
I mean, look, me and you certainly, as non-Jews, certainly do not have a duty to save Judaism. And there is most certainly the fact that a vast, vast, vast majority of Canadian Jews do support the Zionist entity, right? That is a reality. You see anti-Zionist Jews very vocal in terms of the Palestine movement that's in Canada, but that doesn't make them a majority. What they are right now is a small vocal minority. Now, I think we have different feelings on it. For me, I mean, certainly I've just never viewed Judaism as my thing to save. It's not Jewish. But am I gonna say that it's permanently like I wouldn't say exactly how you feel about it. I think I still do look at ultra-Orthodox Jews that would absolutely push back 100% on that. Do I take the anti-Zionist Jews in general, like IJV, so seriously when they talk that way? I take them less seriously than the ultra-Orthodox in general. There's small groupings, like I said, like Jaws and others, JZC, Toronto, that may actually have grounds to say otherwise, and are actually fighting to save it. But is it fair to say that for a majority of Canadian Jews, Judaism is synonymous with Zionism? Yes. I just think, of course, that that fight, isn't mine or yours to fight, Lath, but I also think it can never be ceded. I don't think it could ever be ceded. So let's leave that there. Now let's talk about this case that Dimitri Lascaris and other Canadian lawyers are involved in. There is a lawsuit that's been filed against the government of Canada, where two Palestinian Canadians alleging Canada violated their constitutional rights, essentially centered around Canada violating its duty to prevent genocide. Now, I'm going to be honest with you that I think, of course, in one sense, the legal efforts to pressure the government itself aren't a bad thing, but I am just wondering about what they're hoping to achieve. with this is a good question. Maybe I have Lascaris on to speak about this, because I think that certainly could happen, and I probably will actually now that I think about it. But it's certainly hard for me to tell initially. I would need to talk to Lascaris, interview Lascaris, get a real sense of it, Lath. I'm not. I think you might be a little baffled as I am right now.
Yeah, look, I mean, I don't know how far it can go, and would it be successful or not. It is worth the effort for them just to at least force the Canadian legal system to out itself as supportive of genocide and
That
to
would be that would be one thing, certainly. Yes.
yeah, so that's the best case scenario is that it adds more reason for people to disbelief in this idea of justice systems in the West, that they are independent or that can actually deliver justice. So and this is similarly to what happened with the ICJ and the ICC. The ICJ, didn't end the Holocaust in Gaza. So it exposed itself as a captured imperialist court. Similarly, the ICC decided right now to go after prosecutor Khan, who was supposed to charge Netanyahu and for war crimes, for and then they're investigating him for supposed sexual deviancies while they're letting the war criminals go away. So it's destroying the ICC. So that's the best case scenario. I don't expect the Canadian court to somehow charge Trudeau and his cabinet with the support of and the aiding and abetting of war crimes. That's not going to happen. And I think it will be illogical for the court to not charge these politicians and let's say give damages to the plaintiffs. See, it's not going to happen. So I see it as one more chip in the wall of the idea that Western civilization is more advanced or more fair or what have you.
All right, Lath. Well, I think that'll be where we leave this episode. So, Canada Files viewers, thank you for making it to the end of this episode. If you appreciate the journalism and analysis done by both the Canada Files and Free Palestine TV, please go set up a monthly, annual, or simply give a one-time donation to both of our outlets. And Lath, thanks for, as always, for being here.
See you soon.
Goodbye, everyone.